Good morning. My name is Justin, and man, we're really glad you're here. Whether you're here for the first time or you've been here a long time, we're really glad you're with us. If it is your first time, you're newer here, the best thing for you to do is to go meet us at the tent outside afterwards, just to say welcome and maybe hear some of your stories if you want to share something, or just find out ways you can get connected here to the church. The last few weeks, we've been talking through a series called Make Room. We're really focused on thinking about and attuning our hearts, our minds, our eyes to seeing people like Jesus saw them, making room for people in our lives. But if you're like me, to be honest, it's kind of easy to make room for people that are like me and that I like. People who have the same interests, same values, same experiences, even same stage of life. Like, it can be really easy to make room for those people. But it can be harder to make room for people who are not like me, who don't have the same shared experiences or values or faith. And that's where we're trying to follow the example of Jesus in showing love, not just through our words, but through the people that are around us. We talked about this the first week, the idea that Jesus came and demonstrated God's love not just through what he said, but through who he lived with. Like the people that he brought around and the people he interacted with, the people he talked about, like he brought the message of God, the love of God, not just through the things that he said, but through the people that he actually interacted with. And we are like Jesus when we interact with people who are different than us and show love, make room for them. Now, I would say it's not a bad thing to make space or room for people that are similar to you. Even like our family of faith here at Seven Marks, like we want to create space for you to connect with other people. We call it community groups here at Seven Marks. And that's why over the next couple of weeks, if we go back to the other slide, it talks about community foundations. This is your chance to sign up to be part of a group because we really value it. Like most of my job, my wife will say I'm like the coffee pastor, that I just have coffee all the time with people, which like I'm okay with that for the most part. But she's like, you're the coffee pastor. Like I'm a community pastor. Like most of my job is helping people get connected, find community, feel like they belong and they can help other people belong. But the entry point for our groups is community foundations. So if you are not part of a group and you want to be part of a group next week, you can come to that and we'll talk about how to be part of a group and get connected here at Seven Marks, because we value that, because that's so important that you have a support system, that you have people around you that share your faith. But again, if we only surround ourselves with people who are like us, only surround ourselves with people who believe like us, have the same experiences, we're missing out on something. And we're kind of in a weird spot in society because through technology, we can create a circle of people, create a bunch of people that we know in a digital sense, that we can connect to all these people who are hundreds or even thousands of miles away and have this connection like, yeah, I have a community, but I actually don't know my neighbor's name. And I don't care. I mean, we don't say it this overtly, but like I don't really care for people across the street. Like I can send gifts, I can care for people literally all over the world and not care for the people immediately around me. And I think that's a problem. That's a danger facing us because we can feel great about stuff we do online and not do anything in our neighborhood, in our street. And again, it can be so easy to love people that are like us. And Jesus actually addressed this idea where he said this in Luke chapter 6. He said, what good is it? Like what credit is to you if you love the people who love you? Like him asking that, like what credit, if you love those who love you, what credit, basically he's saying like, it's not much. Like this is normal. Everybody, the way even some of the way Jesus would say this sometimes, like even the Gentiles or even the pagans, even people who don't know God love people who are like them. So if you love people who are like you, like you're kind of just like everybody else. And as followers of the way of Jesus, our lives are not supposed to be just like everybody else. Again, Jesus came and he demonstrated God's love through the people that he was around, the people he chose to interact with. But again, it's normal for us to just connect with people like us. And we even design schools and communities and everything. We're like, we all kind of agree. We're all kind of the same. Even churches can be that way. Like, we're all kind of the same. And I think we miss something incredibly valuable As we're trying to proclaim the love of Jesus to our community, if we all look the same and only make room for people that are like us, to be honest, we're not really practicing the way of Jesus very well. We're not extending love to people very well. So who do we need to make room for? Who should we? Who would Jesus say we should make room for? Well, Jesus actually talked about this very directly in an interaction he had that Luke records in his gospel. The gospel is the first 4 books in the New Testament where these writers experienced Jesus, or they interviewed people who experienced the life of Jesus, and they wrote this narrative account of the life of Jesus. If you have a Bible, I'd love for you to look at the book of Luke with me. Luke wrote this to teach people about how Jesus was, again, demonstrating God's love. So Luke chapter 10 is where we're going to be today. And this is what happened the way Luke records it. He said, it started in verse 25. On one occasion, an expert of the law stood up to test Jesus. And he said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Now, sometimes we read passages of scripture like this and we're like, man, this guy's a bum. Like, he's testing Jesus, and you shouldn't test Jesus because we have all of the story of Jesus' earthly ministry in the Gospels, right? And if you haven't read it yet, I'm going to spoil it for you. It's been around for like thousands of years. You had your chance. But Jesus is God in the flesh, comes, lives a perfect life, dies, is crucified, and then resurrects 3 days later, proving that he had power over sin and death, and also the power to extend life to us, to offer us his way of life. Like, that is what we call the gospel. But this guy, this expert of the law, didn't know all that was going to happen yet. He's an expert of the law testing a rabbi, another expert. Jesus is just some guy right now. He has some followers, and they're like, hey, this rabbi, this teacher is gaining some notoriety, and there's crowds, so we want to evaluate him. So he's going expert to expert. I'm going to ask you a question and see how you interpret the law. But then he goes on, and he's asking about what must I do to inherit eternal life. He's not asking the question we ask so much in our Western Christianity is, how do I get to heaven when I die? And we put faith as this thing, and it is a hope we have for a future with God, but it's actually also something that happens right now. He wasn't asking, what happens when I die? He's asking how, like a better way of asking his question in our context is, how do I experience life to the full? Like God offers us a life that is full and that is good. Like, how do I, what are the things I need to do to experience the life that God has for me? And Jesus responds with a question, and he says, what is written in the law? How do you read it? And the man goes on, he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus said, do this and you will live. It's interesting. Jesus doesn't tell him, believe this and you'll live. He doesn't tell him, hey, go back to the synagogue and take out the scriptures and read the scriptures and write a paper about this and get on a podcast and talk about it, and like all this intellectual knowledge. Like, if you understand this, you'll live. He tells them, do it. You need to do something. There are things to do, not in a way to earn God's favor, but in a way to experience the life that God has for you. Tell him, you need to do this. See, actively embracing the way of Jesus is the only way to experience the life that God has for us. Again, one of the things that is I would say like a danger to so much of Western Christianity is we have this modern idea that I can believe something but act totally opposite of it, and it still is fine. Like, if I told you, for example, I was a vegan, I was like, hey, eating animal products, bad, should not do it, and you catch me eating a cheeseburger, you're not going to go, oh, he obviously is a vegan. It's fine. He can do whatever he wants. I'm going to trust what he said. No, you're going to say, dude, you're not a vegan. Does not count. But for us, we can sometimes, myself included, we declare something that we believe something with our words, with our posts online, and then we go throughout our life living in ways that are contrary to it. See, belief absolutely matters, but it's action that shows what your belief truly is. Jesus tells him, go and do this. So this man, he wants to justify himself, so he asks Jesus, so who is my neighbor? Like, who do I have to love? It's interesting. He doesn't ask anything about loving God. He doesn't say, so how do I love God with my soul, my mind, my strength? How do I do that? What he says is, like, who is my neighbor? Like, God and I are good. I just need to know, like, how far should I extend my circle? How much room should I make? And what's underlying that question, a question that few of us really ask openly, but we ask it in this way, like things like who's important? Like who is worthy of my affection, my attention, my affection? Like who should I give? Even like just bottom line, who matters? Like all of us, through the way we live our lives, we're answering what we believe about these questions. Like, who actually matters? Who do I have to include in my circle? And it's essential for us to talk about this because as we're thinking about circles that we develop around relationships, as we're talking about making room for people, we've talked about this already, that circles are not a bad thing. Like, I have a circle around, like I have a boundary around my family. We have boundaries around even our church family. We call like covenant partnership here at Seven Marks. If these are people who are like, I am all in and I am for this church and this, I want to like follow the way of Jesus. I want you to help me do that. And there's this mutual challenge. Like absolutely, you should have those. The issue is when we make those circles impenetrable and we don't allow people who are outside the circle to get inside the circle. And the reason this is an issue is because when we create circles, when we create boundaries around groups and we have this group of people and that group of people, we subtly believe things about the people in the group and people outside the group. Namely, we begin to believe that people outside the group don't matter as much because they don't agree with me. The fancy $5 word for this is called infrahumanization. Right? I know you were probably thinking about this week. And we're like, I wonder what infrahumanization is. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to tell it to you. So infrahumanization, it's a subtle psychological bias where people view their own social group, those inside their circle, as more fully human than those in other groups. It's a subtle psychological bias where the people you know, the people you like, you view as more fully human than the people you don't know. Now I know you're like, no, Justin, that's not me, because this is like the core of all like racism and sexism and classism. Like this is where all that goes back to. You don't look like me, so you're less human. You don't make the same money as me, so you're less human. You're on the side of the road holding a sign, I don't know you, you messed up, you're less human. Right now, most of us don't like go around thinking like, you're bad. I mean, some of us do, right? But like most of us don't live that way. But it's subtle. It's seen in things like if you're driving somewhere and you get cut off in traffic, right? And when I get cut off in traffic, if someone does something in traffic that I disapprove of, I give them a big thumbs down. And I'll just leave it out there for them to see. Rachel hates it. She's like, would you stop? I'm like, I could do other hand gestures if you want, but I'm going to give them a big thumbs down to let them know I disapprove of their decision, right? For some of us, you get cut off and you get angry. And I know, again, like, this is like what we all do, right? Some of you are nodding like, yes, this is me. Is you are going to speed up to get right next to them, and you are going to glare at them so hard, and you're probably going to cut them off too, right? Some of you are like, yes, that's like the rules of the road. But here's the deal. If you've ever been in a situation, you're like, I'm going to glare at them so hard, and then you get up close to them, and you look, and you recognize them, and you let off the gas real quick. You're like, no, it's fine. What just happened? You realize that the person who cut you off is no longer outside of your group, they're inside your group, so they're worthy of more compassion. And you go, oh, they probably had a reason. They're probably late to car line too. Maybe they have an emergency. Again, once you recognize someone as part of your in-group, you treat them differently. That's what this is. So this expert of the law is asking Jesus, who is my neighbor? Who do I have to treat with dignity? Who is worthy of receiving my compassion and love? Again, this is so important for us because we can create circles and communities in a digital world and feel like we're doing great and we're not even loving the neighbors that we have. We're not seeing the people right around us. So Jesus, in response to this question, he tells this story. And he says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And a priest happened to be going to the same road. And when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. And so too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. And Jesus is telling the story. Again, a parable is a made-up story to illustrate a truth about God. This is a fictitious story. But Jesus picks all the characters very intentionally. The priest, the Levite, these are the men who would know the law the best, who probably could teach the law, who could tell you all about loving people, and they could write the papers, and they could do the keynote speech. Like they knew all this stuff, but they failed to do what the law required. And they probably had good reason, because in their law, if you touched something that was dead, you were now unclean. You couldn't do the ceremonial stuff they were supposed to do. There's a whole process of you touch something dead. So this guy is naked, laying there, half dead. They're walking on the street. They see him. Totally makes sense to be like, oh, he might be dead. I have important things to do. I got to step over here because I don't want to be unclean. But the problem is this dude is broken up, busted, laying on the ground, half dead. He's in a real tough way. And instead of slowing down and seeing the person that needed help, they were focused on the things that they had to do. They were important. They had to get somewhere. They probably had really meaningful stuff they had to do. If you only knew the people that I was going to go show love to at where I'm going, and they totally missed the point. Again, Jesus goes back to if you do something. It's not believe something. People who do something. He goes on, he says, but a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. Now, with the original audience, this is one of those things where Samaritans were seen as less than human. They were totally in the out group of people. Even Jews would refer to them as half-breeds, like serious, like moderate to severe racial tension with this group of people. So everyone, they're all Hebrews sitting around Jesus listening. They're like, a Samaritan can even show pity? Like, we didn't think people like them were even capable of those emotions. And Jesus, again, through who he's talking about and how he's teaching, he's elevating this outsider to the spot of the hero of the story, which is like insane to these original listeners. For us, it's like no big deal because we don't know Samaritans. Right? And we could tell the story, I could tell the story about a half a dozen different ways and insert something that's going to offend a bunch of people in here about this person's the hero of the story and be like, I feel really uncomfortable about that. That's the point. Jesus is a master storyteller, and he's saying, I want to get to not simply your head, I want to get to your heart where you feel it. And he goes on, he says that the Samaritan, he went to the man, he bandaged his wounds, and he poured on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took 2 denarii out of his and gave it to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. This guy went above and beyond. It wasn't simply like, hey, you good? Here's a bottle of water. It's like, I'm going to care for, again, you look at the story, Jesus said the guy's naked, half dead. I don't know if you've ever cared for someone that got like beat up. It's kind of gross. But like early in our parenting, my wife and I, we talked and we had this agreement, like she can be the poop and puke parent and I'll be the blood and guts parent. We're like, let me straight. I change diapers. I think if you're a dad, you should change diapers, right? But like she's going to deal primarily with that stuff. I'll deal with, like I have broken bones and stitches and like I can deal with all that stuff. And it was like, awesome, spit, shake, sign the contract, good to go. And then our oldest daughter had her first loose tooth. And Rachel's like, all right, this is all you, dude. This is like the blood and gut stuff. I was all right, I'm going to pull her tooth out. I go in, I'm ready, sleeves up. I touch it. Y'all, I was out so fast. I was like, no, I'm sorry. I thought you thought you married a better man too. Like, I thought I could handle this. I was like, it's not for me. It's not, like, if you're here and you're like, I could do it, like, yeah, sure. Like just start pulling kids' teeth. Now, I have gotten a lot better at it. Now I just rip them out, even if they're not ready, just get the money from the tooth fairy. I'm just kidding. We wait till they're ready. But this is the thing, like, caring for people. We like to, like, sanitize all these stories of Jesus. And like even the investment of time, he had to slow down. And he had to sit and he had to care for this guy. And it took time. But he saw the person in front of him as someone that needed help, and he gave up whatever else that he was working towards and said, I need to care for this person. Like, could it be that we have such a hard time being neighbors to the people around us and showing love to the people around us because we live at a pace that we just don't see people? Like we just go. And we have no time to care for people. For some of you, I even think this is like, again, you're so worried about the thing that you're trying to do, you forget the people around you need your help. You forget that the people, right, like the kids in your house, your spouse, other family members, the people at your work, like the person next to you in the cubicle, yeah, they are not like bleeding and broken up, but they are broken inside and they need someone just to see them, just to hear them. So Jesus is telling this story and he's pointing out it's not just about who you should extend love to, it's about who you should be. So he asks this expert of the law, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? Jesus is pushing the envelope and saying, you're an expert of the law. I took your experts and I put them in the bad light of this story. I elevated the Samaritan that you have no love, no regard for. They're the hero. That's the only answer. Everyone in the room is like, are you kidding me, Jesus? Not that, like. And Jesus clarifies and elevates the bar, which he does in so much of his teaching. But Jesus said, it's not about who, it's about you. It wasn't which person was like needed a neighbor. It was who acted neighborly. It's not about who, because we love to go, well, like, okay, technically, who am I supposed to love? Technically, how am I, like, we love to get out of things and have loopholes and the letter of the law. Like, well, technically, I loved them because I said a prayer for them. And Jesus is saying, it's about you being a neighbor. No matter who you're around, you act like a neighbor. Again, it's simple. It's clear. It's not easy, though. It's elevating the bar. Say, who's around you? They're your neighbor. If you operate in a life where I'm just going to be a good neighbor to anyone around me, it simplifies, but it also elevates. So Jesus goes on. He's talking with the expert, and he answers him. The expert of the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus says again, go and do likewise. It's not go believe. It's not go study. Again, we like to create all sorts of like royal missions and like, I'm just gonna like develop this whole plan for like, and Jesus is like, forget complicated and difficult, simple. Open your eyes to see people around you and love those people. You want to know what God is like? God is a neighbor of the people around. God slows down and cares for people around him. Again, it's easier for us even to connect and to care for people out there. But your actual neighbors, your actual family members, like honestly, those are some of the hardest people to love, aren't they? Because you have baggage, because you have history with them, because they don't follow the HOA rules and you're just frustrated about that. Like whatever it is, you're like, it's a lot. And I'd rather love people out there than actually have to love people close to me. But Jesus is telling us, if you want to be like God, you be a neighbor to those around you. Can you imagine what it would look like for a community of people to actually live this way? Like in a culture that is so quick to cancel and exclude, and you don't check all the boxes, so you're out, and these are my people and those aren't, and it's so like, honestly, it's just sad. Can you imagine a group of people who would say, you know who I'm going to love? The person in front of me, the person beside me, The person who is broken and needing help, I'm going to love that person. Yeah, it may not be super glamorous, but I'm going to love them. That's why one of the things I love that I get to do with my job here, and you all don't get to see it, so I love just telling you stories about it so you can kind of live vicariously through me, is just all the good that our community partners are doing, and even our church partners. We're going out into these communities and working with organizations like the Raleigh Dream Center. Y'all, they had an incredible event called Back to School Bash this past week, and they gave away thousands of backpacks to kids who need backpacks. And they had all sorts of carnival games and face painting and balloon, and they just had tons of fun just being good neighbors. They go out twice a month to go into communities to love people around the Raleigh area. Like imagine how your life would look different if you said, I'm going to step in, I'm going to help with this. Or I think about like the foster closet that we host. Here, it's an organization we work with that just gives free supplies out to families in foster care. And it is a beautiful thing to come in and see families come in, and families who've aligned their heart with God's heart. Even if they aren't sure about what they believe with Jesus, they are acting as God would act and providing and loving these children. And we just get to give them free stuff and say, what else do you need? How can we help you? Get some clothes. Hey, do you mind if we pray with you? Like imagine what it would look like in our community if we really bought in and really shaped it, not just through organizations, but through you in your neighborhood. And you think about people in our church family that have stepped up to offer foster care, and even some step to the point of adopting children who are broken and in need, and they're saying, I'm going to create space for these children. Because the reality is, I'm broken in need too, and Jesus was a neighbor to me. So now I'm going to extend that same love to people around me. Imagine a group of people doing that. And again, it's not about complicated plans. It's not about big scale things. It's just simple, small steps to become a more loving person. And so we talk about practicing the way of Jesus here a lot. That's our thing. But practicing the way of Jesus is not simply about getting good at practice. It's about you becoming a person of love. Because if you do all the practices and you have no love, I think Paul would say you're just a noisy gong and clanging cymbal. It doesn't matter at all. But when you slow down and you begin to embrace the way of Jesus in your life, and you are slow, you're spending time with God and getting his heart and mind on your heart and mind, then you extend that to the people around you. It's about becoming a person of love. And love slows down to see the people in front of them and just meet their needs. About a year ago, right now, actually, my wife and I, we were listing our house for sale, and it was super exciting. We were so excited to be here, and it was awesome. But one of the really hard things about moving away from where we were was just saying goodbye to a bunch of people. And one of the people in particular were our neighbors, our neighbor, Miss Scotty. So we lived in that house about 7 years, and we moved in with babies, and we just kept having babies. So we were moving out with babies, but Miss Scotty and her husband Mike, they were just the best neighbors. They were just incredible, and they were in their 70s, and they would come over and talk to us. And Mike was awesome because I could borrow any tool that I ever needed. I just walk over and be like, "Hey, Mike, I'm working on this project," and he'd be like, "Let's get the tool." And we'd go in his garage and we'd get the tool, and he'd let me borrow it. And half the time, he's helping me on the projects. And I'm like, "Mike, you're well along in years." Right? That's a nice way to say that, right? "Mike, I don't know if you should help me shovel broken tiles into the back of your truck and take it to the dump." But he was just the best neighbor. Scotty was the best neighbor. Mike was retired, and he would do simple things. On trash day, he'd grab the trash barrels and pull them up to your garage door so you don't have to go get it. Simple, loving people. And then in 2021, Mike had a stroke. And he couldn't help in the same way. And guess what? It was our turn to be a loving neighbor just through simple stuff. Grabbing the trash can and walking up to the garage door. They were the best neighbors because they saw us and they cared for us. And I think for you, what would it look like for you to be the most caring neighbor in your community? to be the most loving person in your community. And not like weird, over the top stuff, but just like, hey, how can I help? You see a neighbor working on something. Hey, what are you doing? How can I help? Just giving time and space for people. In your place of business where you go to work, imagine what it would be like if you asked people how they were doing and you really meant it. You say, oh man, it sounds like you had a really rough week. That's tough. Oh, you had a really great time. Hey, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. Again, it's not complicated. Jesus simplifies and clarifies, but he elevates the bar. It's about you being a neighbor to people around you. And as you are being a good neighbor, you get to talk to people about Jesus. Can I tell you, it is so much easier to talk about church or faith when you're doing good things in the community. You know, I mentioned Raleigh Dream Center having their back to school bash. So they asked us, because we're one of their partners, they said, can you buy 1,000 hot dogs and 1,000 hot dog buns? And I was like, yeah, totally, because the generosity of our church, it's like an easy yes, awesome. So I go to Sam's to pick them up, and this lady brings them out, and like, I don't know if you've seen 1,000 hot dogs and 1,000 hot dog buns. It's a lot. Like I had to like lay the seats down in my minivan. And she comes out, this lady working at Sam's, and she said, do you run like a hot dog cart? Like, what are you doing with all this stuff? Because again, it's just hot, it's not a whole bunch of stuff, it's just these two things. And I said, well, are you familiar with Raleigh Dream Center? It's right around the corner, and they're running this event. It's an awesome event. They're doing all this good in the community. And like, I work at a church right up the street, and we get to partner with them. We're just honestly, we are so thankful we get to partner in a small way of the thing that they're doing. And it's so great. And we started talking about this. And it wasn't like a dove flew down from heaven and she like said yes to Jesus and left her stuff. Like, it was just talking about church, talking about faith. They're like, yeah, it's awesome because it's so easy when we're doing good things. I think the opposite's also true though. Like there's a lot of people who even they feel like the church, I've talked to these people like, oh man, I'm gonna like burst into flames if I go in the church. I think the roof is gonna collapse if I come in there. And I'm like, but that's not the heart of God for you at all. Where did you hear that? Honestly, they heard it from Christians probably. They heard it from people who were like, hey, this is our circle. You have to do all this stuff to have admittance in here. And when you get your stuff together, then you're welcome to come in. And maybe it was overtly, like they actually said that to them, or maybe it was under the radar, just this vibe that got put out of like, yeah, you're not really happy that I'm here. So we want to create a church, create a space where we can do good in our community, be great neighbors, to love people around them because we have been so loved by God, and then see people turn to Jesus. Because the goal of my life is not simply to be a good neighbor so everyone loves me and then cries when I move out of the neighborhood. Because it's not about me. My idea for my life is I want to be a good neighbor so that I can introduce my neighbors to Jesus. I can point them to Jesus. And we know that can be really intimidating for some of you. It's intimidating for me too. Right? I was going to an appointment this past week and I was like, I have to talk about church. I have to talk about Jesus. I have to talk about church. And I was like so nervous. And I was like, he's going to ask me what I do for a living. And I'm going to be like, I'm a pastor. But we talked, I find out that dude, he's actually a believer. I was like, oh, good. But I was like, but I wanted to like talk to you about Jesus. Why do you know Jesus? You shouldn't know him. No. It was just the attitude of, I feel like I need to try this thing because I feel like the Spirit God's pushing me to do this thing. I need to try this. For some of us, like it's intimidating, it's heavy, and that's why we want to create a space for every kind of person to come and explore faith, explore big questions about life, and that's why we're launching Alpha next week. You've heard us talk about this for several weeks. Alpha is the place where you can invite your friends, your family members, your coworkers, to say, hey, you have questions about faith, you're trying to figure out stuff, you're struggling with stuff. Even this is a spot where you hear people talk about like, I don't think there can be God because X happened. That's an entry point into say, hey, I'm not going to argue with you, I'm not going to try to convince you, I'm just going to invite you to a meal. Alpha runs for 11 weeks, we'll be here on site at our church, and we want to create the most welcoming, neighborly feeling place imaginable for people. And what they'll do is they'll come in, and you're more than welcome to join us. They'll come in, they'll have a meal, and we'll just hang out and talk. people from all different faith backgrounds and all different life experiences, all different ages, and we can have people come in. We're just going to share a meal and talk, and hey, how was your week? And this is my week, great. And then we're going to watch a video. And the video will talk about a big question around faith in life. Questions like, who was Jesus? Or why did Jesus have to die? And then after the video, where we'll clearly present the truth, we're going to sit at a table and we're going to be neighbors. And we're going to say, hey, what did everyone think of what was shared in the video? And this is what is going to blow some people's minds. They get to say whatever they want. And we will look at them with lovingly eyes and say, man, thanks for sharing that. I'm so glad that you're here. I never thought about it that way. I'm not saying that your thing is right, and I'm not going to your side and saying, oh, great, this is all great and awesome. I'm just saying, thank you for sharing that, because what I have found so often is that people that have issues with faith have significant hurts in their life. And they have big questions, and they need a neighbor to walk alongside them, to be part of the process of God working in their life. And through Alpha, we're going to provide a space that's welcoming and comfortable for them, with every intention and hope and desire that the Spirit of God would work mightily in their lives, and that they would turn to Jesus and fall in love with him, and that they would experience a life to the full, that eternal life that Jesus offers to us. But in order to run Alpha well, in order to provide that space, we need neighbors. We need people like you, with your unique point of view and faith background and experience and story, to sit at a table and just create a welcoming space for people. So I would love to invite you, if you're exploring faith or you're trying to figure it out, I'd love to invite you to be part of Alpha. If you're someone that's I don't have all the answers, but I would love to create a safe space for somebody. For me, it's personal, because there's people in my family I wish could come to Alpha. And I would say is, if that's you, if you have people in your family, people you know, man, I wish they would come, you should help us throw a Alpha launch party for all these people, where they can come in and they can be received with such an overwhelming love through hospitality that they say, I'll come back, I'll keep exploring this stuff. Because God has shown us that kind of love. We get to show it to people around us. You can scan this QR code with your phone. You can be part of Alpha. We can talk. Again, we're doing training in the next few weeks where you can be part of creating a space. Corporately, we're going to do this together, but also you should go do this in your neighborhood. You should go be a good neighbor. So this week, just pray and ask God, how can I be a neighbor? How can I care for people around me? How can I, in my place of work, in my neighborhood, in my school, who is laying on the ground, broken and beat up, that needs help? And again, it's simple things like holding the door for somebody, smiling at someone, pulling the trash can up to the house, stopping and talking to someone, just giving them your time. Again, we can run at such a pace where we don't even see people. Jesus said this about money, but I think it applies here. He said, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and money. I think the same is true here. You can't serve hurry and kindness. Slow down, see your neighbors, and be a neighbor. Because God's been the ultimate neighbor to you. He's shown you unconditional love. The proper response for us is to show that love to people around us.